Hello, friends. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley, and today we're going to talk about how to release trapped emotions by using a technique known as EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. We're going to discuss this technique, the mechanisms, and how it can help your body release those emotions that have been stuck in your actual tissues. And we're going to go over a couple things such as homeopathics and some extra therapies that could be used to help you to release those traumas, those problems that have happened in your life. You and I know that the emotional traumas that happen in our past can definitely get stuck in the body. In fact, there are great books such as The Body Keeps the Score. And it is a book that talks about how trauma can actually get stored in your tissue, in your brain. And the traumas that get stuck in your tissues and brain literally can cause physical manifestations of that emotional trauma. We often think that emotions are just thoughts, they're whimsical bubbles that are in the air and they have no real significant value. But the emotions can literally be able to create a biochemical change in your body. In fact, most all or every single decision we do is based on an emotion creating what? A biochemical change in our body that initiates an action or movement in our physical body, in our arms and legs. So trauma has the ability to basically be trapped in certain areas of the body, and it can also be trapped in the brain. So your body will record an emotional trauma, they say, through the 5 senses. You record it through your sight, your smell, your hearing, your tasting, and your touch. You record everything in your life in memory at the subconscious level. And your body remembers what sensation you had at the moment of that trauma and which one was most prominent. So you can remember the sight, something you saw during that trauma, something you smelled during that trauma, something you heard. So you could have that emotional trauma locked into your brain and you can record it with the sensation, the sense that was stimulated. So if there is a trauma you suffered in your life and there was a particular smell you remembered, that smell can go into your body and trigger the emotional response, the biochemical change, and you can almost mimic how you responded when the original trauma happened. So you have a smell that reminds you of the original trauma. Your body reacts to the smell by creating the biochemical changes that you had back in the past, as though it's present. So the emotional trauma is in storage. And remember, the body and the brain does not differentiate if it happened in the past or in the present. It's a memory that's logged in. So if it's not basically cleaned out, your body does not say, oh, that's an old emotion. It's saying, I'm going to respond to that sensation that just occurred because that trauma is actively happening. I hope that makes sense. Your body sees that trauma as happening. It doesn't go back into the memory bank and say, oh, that happened 10 years ago. It is saying, I smelled that different smell and that trauma is happening now. So when you have those types of things trapped in the body, you realize that your body has all of these things that are trapped in it. And all it takes is something to trigger or initiate the biochemical change. When we go through life, we realize that we live most of our life at a subconscious level. We go to work, the same pathway from home to the office. We basically eat our food in the same basically way or same steps. We like to have our cup of coffee every single morning. Our lives are mostly in a subconscious level. We don't even think about it. When we have a trauma occurring in our lives or occurred in our life, we build adaptations around that trauma. If we don't clean it out, our bodies adapt to the trauma because the body feels as though that trauma is still occurring or it's stored. It's going to stay there. The program of the trauma is there, and I have to work around it. And that becomes a subconscious program. You literally get so used to the trauma being present that you literally move your life around that trauma to basically keep it there. You don't mean to. The trauma is there and you adapt to it. Like, oh, here, this trauma happened so many years ago. And your body kind of responds to it and say, maybe I got rid of it, or I didn't actively try to help release it. Subconsciously, your body gets so used to it that your body can keep it around. And we don't want that. So as we see that these traumas are occurring, we have to actively clean them out of the brain and out of the tissue. I recently had a patient that had come into the office and had serious lung issues, hard time breathing. And the lungs were congested. And through my testing, I was presented with the possibility of this patient having an infection known as Klebsiella pneumonia and mycoplasma. These are two bacteria that are actively associated with walking pneumonia. And it just occurred in the last 2 months. And the lungs were very, very deep, gruffle sound when you did any type of scope and listening to the expansion of the lungs. You could tell there was some form of pneumonia. And the doctors that saw the patient said, well, we're going to take some antibiotics, but it didn't seem to resolve the issue of the heavy breathing, the hard breathing. It started to become where it was getting shallow. And when the patient had come in, I had asked the patient what had occurred 2 months prior, or was there some kind of event that literally reminded you of anything else? And the patient told me of a severe trauma that had occurred about 4 to 5 months prior. And there was a particular sensation that she experienced, something that she smelled and heard that reminded the body of that particular incident. Now, the crazy thing, I don't say crazy, I think one of the most interesting things about how our body records sensations is that it can do it while you're either unconscious or conscious. Your body records it. And some of the traumas that I've seen patients basically absorb was in an unconscious state. So the body heard the sensation at the time of the trauma and had a particular smell to it. And the patient went into what they call like just a biochemical frenzy. And they literally were trying to fight it. They said, I don't know why this is happening. I know I want to release it. I wanted to give it away. I just don't want it in my life anymore. And then the patient starts to blame themselves. And I was feeling very heavy in my heart for the patient. And one of the things that you have to associate with the lungs in Chinese medicine is grief. And the lungs literally are trying to breathe in more air because they call it a death conflict. They feel like they're dying inside. And this patient felt like she was dying inside. And what happens at times when the lungs start to but address the trauma by trying to adapt to it, the lungs will start to actually try to breathe in more air. They'll try to expand more. They'll actually get thicker. The lungs will. And then the body will allow certain types of infections or microbes to get into the lungs to help remove any excess tissue, because the body doesn't want the lungs to get overexpanded. There has to be a certain level and balance. So the patient, she had gone through this trauma, and now she's trying to balance it out with her body allowing certain infections to come to the surface or allow these infections to increase at a different rate because of that original trauma. All that to say, when the patient had come in, I took her through some neurological retraining exercises, and EFT was one of the techniques that I help incorporate, and I use eye movement therapy with it. So I have the patient gently try to remember the trauma, and then I had them move their eyes in a certain direction and see if if their muscles stay strong throughout their whole body, see if they stay strengthened throughout their whole body with their eyes in a certain position while thinking of the trauma. That is when the body will take that memory of trauma and store it in a certain part of the brain. And so when the person puts their eyes in that direction, you are looking at the emotion, literally. You are trying to initiate the area of the brain where the trauma sits. The eyes are like little brains. They are the same tissue of the brain. You can put your eyes like an EMDR. You are looking into parts of the brain to find out where the trauma is stored. Research, please, for me, Hammerfield's, Hamer. Learn the German New Medicine. It talks about how traumas can be stored in certain parts of the brain. And literally you can see those fields of energy. They're known as Hammer fields. So when they initiate her eyes into a certain position, we found the area of the brain where the emotion was stored. And then I used tapping techniques on the beginning and ending points of the meridian system. So I want to go through this without getting too complicated. I believe if you looked at EFT tapping and looked at the websites we give on the show notes, you're going to see that it's explained a little more simple than I'm going to give it right now. But the meridian system is used to circulate chi and energy throughout the body to basically give energy to all the organs. The organs in Chinese medicine, they say, operate with their own mind. They call it the Shen, the Po, the Yi. Each organ has its own processes of trying to what? Process the emotions and respond to trauma. They process and respond to certain emotions particular to that organ. I hope that makes sense. So your lungs help you process grief. Your liver helps you process anger. Your stomach processes worry. Your spleen processes pensiveness. The gallbladder processes frustration and resentment and being overwhelmed. The large intestine processes being controlled or holding on to too much waste in life. Each organ literally processes an emotion because, for example, if your colon helps you process the emotion of I'm holding on to something that's very toxic to me, it literally is the organ that helps you let go of the toxic waste in your life. Does that make sense? So your brain and your organs are communicating. Organs perform certain functions of releasing emotions. That organ is responsible for releasing the waste, right? And any event or trauma or any type of activity in your life that would make you hold on to more toxins or waste is going to be linked to the organ, to the colon. So any person in your life, for example, that made you hold on to toxic waste, controlled you, would cause basically the colon to respond in a negative manner. It will hold on to the toxic waste. It will make you constipated. I hope that makes sense. If a person makes you hold on to toxic waste, it may make your colon become constipated. That's German New Medicine. And I completely agree because we try to separate the emotions from the physical body, and they are not separate. So you have the energy of the body. And if you see here on the screen, if you're watching me, guys on YouTube, you have 12 meridians on each side. The 12 meridians are named after the 12 organs that those little highways of energy pass near. So meridians are highways of electrical energy. There are 12 on each side. They are connected from end to end. They are named after the organ that they run near or by or through. Does that make sense? So you have each organ basically connected through this energetic highway. And the energy is circulating slowly through that meridian, those meridians, all day, every day on each side. So the liver energy is running through the liver from 1 to 3 a.m., nourishing the liver, and then it jumps over into the lungs at 3 a.m. And it gets energized for 2 hours, and then it jumps over to the large intestine at 5 a.m. Do you see? It's like one highway leading to the next. But what if somebody in your life, like this young lady had caused her to have a death conflict or had her scared for her life? And this emotion caused her to trap and hold on to the trauma so much that she was not able to grieve it out. Grief and death conflicts are associated with the lungs. The energy of the lungs was low. It was not allowed to express that grief. So she created a block right at the junction of the lung meridian and the large intestine. This one highway of lung energy is turning into the large intestine at 5 a.m. But right at that meeting point, there becomes a block. Why? Because the lung is trying to use all that energy to take that trauma and try to understand it, try to process it, because it's so hard on the lungs. The lung is like saying, I want to grieve this out, but I do not know how to release it out. It's trapped. It's trapped there in the lungs, and that energy is just stewing in the lungs, causing it to overheat. Infections start to build up, trying to remove any excess tissue as a result of the emotion. And so you start to have lung infections. So tapping with the eye movement, we identified where the eyes moved, and we found out through pulse point, therapy and examination in Chinese medicine that her lungs were the weak area. They were building up with energy, but basically it was imbalanced. I like to use the word imbalanced. So that little junction, I started to tap between the large intestine and lung and large intestine. That little meeting place, you can use a needle. You can use acupressure, but with tapping, you're using vibration and the consistent, basically vibrational pattern of tapping to open up the meeting point, the blocked point, so the soft tissue will actually just flow. The chi will flow right through that soft tissue. And if you break it open, there's not any more bounding of the soft tissue at that little meeting point. And if you tap that area, you're going to get the fascia to basically release. There is amazing research about how vibration can actually cause the fascia, the bound of fascia, to just relax. Not only are you tapping the area and getting the opening of the connective tissue where the chi flows right through, so it goes right to the large intestine, but you're actually causing the brain to connect with the point. You are going to do what? You're going to tap the lung point, and it's going to stimulate the part of the brain that's associated with the lung. So the brain recorded the trauma, it stored it in the lungs, and it also stored it in the area of the lungs that's in the brain. So the related area of the lungs, where the lungs are controlled in the brain, had a stored program of the trauma. So I hope that makes sense. You tap the point, you open up the connective tissue, and you also light up the area of the brain where that trapped emotion is stored. And we know now through much neurological research that the emotion, when it is, or the trauma, when it's so great that the brain cannot process it all, because the brain's recording everything, but the brain is so brilliant and the body's so brilliant, it knows that the person cannot process all that information. If the body tries to process all of it, it will go and shut down. So your body will allow you to remember 10% of something, 15% of something, 30% of something, and it stuffs it the rest down in the tissue without being cognitively aware. So we only process a certain amount and our bodies go on with the rest of our day. But when that area that's stored is absorbing and making you waste energy on storing that emotion, it starts to cause disruption in other parts of the body. And the body is adapted. So it says, oh, that's just an energy drain. I got to live with it because I can't let it go because it'd be too overwhelming for me to process it. But what can you do? Or what happens if you could actually open up that emotion in nice, simple, safe ways to where you process it out gently? And EFT tapping, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to gently and safely open up those trapped emotions that are deep in the cells and brain layers. So you light up the area of the brain where, let's say, the lung was holding on to the grief. I tapped the point. The eyes were focused on the area where the brain had this problem with the trapped emotions. And tapping it caused that emotion to go from the deep layers, and it starts to resonate with the trauma, and the trauma starts to do what? Rise to the surface. To where the outer cortex of the brain can take that trauma and create neurons to go and process it out of the prefrontal cortex. Your body will take that deep layer, pull it up to the surface, and send it to the area of the brain where it can process it out. So then that person, what happens is that she starts to remember small activities and small things that were associated with the trauma until she remembered a lot of it. And when her body remembered all of it, it made the body do what? Like a shudder. The body will do a shaking, a crying, a grief, just a release of all that ache and pain, and it comes out, and the body's like, oh, why am I shaking? Because even in nature, you'll see animals who have been attacked and injured, and they shake because their fascia is such a storehouse of emotions. And then all of a sudden you shake it out because you're moving all that excess energy through the connective tissue to the surface, and the brain can process it all and release it. That's why a gazelle, when it gets attacked by a cheetah or something and escapes, can shake that energy off, and then it runs off and lives its day. It doesn't go around all day just going, oh, I'm going to get attacked. I'm attacked by a cheetah right now. I've been attacked. No. It has to release it to survive. And you and I need to release the emotions so we have enough empty space on our hard drive internally so that we can take other traumas in life and process them. But just like a computer, you don't want to keep storing that information in your hard drive until it's full of capacity, and then your hard drive moves slower, your brain, and then it eventually will shut down. You have to realize, and when you're thinking about trauma, always kind of relate and think about your brain and your body being like a hard drive, almost like an iPhone. And you get enough information running. If you have too many apps running in the background, what does your phone do? It runs slow. You have to swipe them off. Otherwise, they're going to keep on doing what? They're going to keep on absorbing the energy of the battery and running the battery lower, and basically getting that battery to be low in energy, not as efficient, and the phone has to be replaced. So we want to make sure we clean out the trauma, get it to the surface of the brain so it can process it out. So just by gently tapping that point on the lung meridian allowed the chi and the electrical energy to go from the lungs and pass safely through the large intestine. Now, what this does is that it lights up the area of the brain starts to process it, the brain gets comfortable saying, yes, I can let go of this. I can process this. And when you get the energy to flow very evenly throughout the whole meridian system daily, and you open up all the points where the highways connect, if you open up all those points and you help all the organs connect, you're allowing each organ to help one another. It's a community, so the organs know they're going to be helped. We in our epigenetics, we in our lives, in our genetic upbringing, our family life, we basically can weaken certain organs that are meant to process certain emotions, i.e. the lungs and grief. We can train them, the organs, to actually think that they're alone. I hope you guys see that. Like the lungs on the patient thought that they weren't going to get helped in any way. Possibly because the lungs within that family line have been weakened over, generations. Generational grief, generational fright. So the lungs have been used to this fight throughout the generations of the family line, and now it's like, I'm not going to be helped. So you tap the point, and now all the meridians are starting to connect like this huge highway of energy that's running 24 hours a day, and the organs are like, well, I'm going to get some energy, and the lungs go, well, you know what, around 1 to 3 a.m., I'm going to get another round of energy, and I'm going to be able to process that emotion a little bit more tomorrow. So it's safe. I'll be able to process it. Now, one of the biggest things that I've heard really great EFT practitioners say is that they have to have their statements that are very, very good for a person to say, because when you're tapping the point and you're getting a daily source of energy, you're tapping these points every day and getting the body to communicate, you want to create new neural pathways, new pathways in the brain and nervous system to create a better belief, a new belief. So you'll hear people saying EFT tapping, even though I have experienced this form of trauma, I know that my lungs, my body can process it safely. I love my body and how it can respond, that it can be a healing mechanism. By God's grace, this stuff can be released out of my tissues in a safe, effective manner. Be in a safe place while you're doing this, and know that you can process out daily. And if you say it enough times, like let's say you said it 5 times or 3 times in the day while you're tapping, just it over and over, your brain will start to create the neurological pathways. Your nervous system will start to believe it. So your brain starts to believe it. The brain feels that it's safe. And so all those hidden emotions where it felt unsafe to come to the surface, out of that tissue of the organ and out of the tissue of the brain, starts to come to the surface. You're like, oh, it's safe. I can do this. So the tapping throughout all the points. Now, I know that there's great examples. If you go over to the show notes and it tells you about which EFT websites you can go to, they'll tell you to go to each of the beginning and ending points. They are just what they sound like, the beginning and ending point of the meridian. So you have the gallbladder 1. That's one of the points you hit on the corner of the eyes. The stomach 1 is right below the eyes. The large intestine 20 is at the corner of the nose, of the nostrils. That's the last point of the large intestine. You can go to the beginning or the ending point. They have you go and tap them lightly while you're saying a basic mantra or a basic statement. Remember, because you're trying to initiate that change in the brain, in the body, and in your subconscious. And this change in your electrical field and this change in the meridian system will change the energetic field around your body. There's a lot more discussion, but when you start to tap the points, you're getting that energy, the chi, to rotate throughout the body, and it's strengthening the biofield that's emanating off the body. And that biofield has a membrane around it. And that membrane is strengthened by how well the chi flows throughout your body. So the stronger your flow, the stronger the membrane of your biofield. And people think it sounds woo-woo, but there's plenty of research that's been showing, and research and studies that have showed the biofield. It's light, it's wavelength, it's frequencies coming off the body. And that frequency field has a barrier. And if your organs are communicating with each other and it's balanced, it will create a strength around the membrane, so it won't allow the traumas that resemble that original trauma to come into your life. That's why people say, I will attract. If you don't get traumas released, you may attract those types of individuals that basically remind you of the trauma or those kind of events. Because there is a part of the membrane of your field that allows that kind of frequency to enter into your field. So EFT tapping not only helps your energetic system and your fascial system and your acupuncture system, it helps with the biofield as well. So I want you guys to check out the EFT tapping. EFT tapping, to me, is one of the most effective emotional release techniques. I've used it since I was in school, and I've seen patients where they, like with this patient, when we started to do that eye movement therapy and tapping, it was after 2 visits, she was literally really, really beside herself in the sense like it was not coming out. And thankfully, the patient said that I'm feeling so much better. I'm processing out. It's not making me respond biochemically, like the body's shutting down like it did before. And we're doing continuous work, and we're going down through layers. We're going to go all out. Let's go back into the deep layers. What led to that lung meridian, holding all that energy in the first place? Let's go through some generational thoughts and processes. That's why I love EMDR, neurofeedback, lens therapy. Please write these down. Talk therapy, counseling, any type of neurological therapy and prayers that are used to create changes in your electrical system, in your brain, to help change your belief system so that trauma can come out. Eye movement therapy, breath work. Breath work is amazing. Body movement therapy, somatic therapy. You guys out there know who I'm talking about. You guys are doing awesome work. I can't say that one's better than the other. I'm saying that they all work well. I just like EFT tapping. It's something that you and I could do at home that doesn't require us to, have to spend a lot of money, go somewhere and have to get this done. But if you really start to use this technique of EFT tapping, you can go through all of some of your traumas and start working at it. And you're going to start seeing some things come to the surface. You'll be surprised. I did. And when those things come to the surface, you start to feel how it feels in your body and which organs are really tied down. And you guys out there know I'm talking about when you say, whenever I'm around this person or this event or place or thing, this part of my body shuts down. Why? Because there's something stored in that part of your body and in your brain. Sometimes I'll use like Des Bio. Des Bio is a great company, like these homeopathics. One's called Anxious, or PTS, stress remedy, because there's homeopathic remedies that act like telephone calls. And when you take that while we're doing the therapy, I'll have them do like maybe 10 drops 3 times a day. And I have the patient literally take their tongue and spread that homeopathic remedy all through around their mouth, around their teeth, their gums, their buccal lining, the mouth lining, because I want to soak in and I want the brain to record all that frequency. And what is it doing? If you're listening to this, if you take a homeopathic, it is sending a frequency throughout your body. And what it's trying to do is like a telephone call all the areas of the tissue that's recorded a trauma that is related to, like, let's say anxiousness or PTSD. And what it does is it wakes up that trauma and you go, why would I want to do that? It's like, because it's stuck in your tissue and in your brain. And when it wakes it up, it gives it some vibrational pattern. But what happens is the energy from that trauma will be attracted to the homeopathic and it will send its energy to the homeopathic like a tuning fork. And that homeopathic will receive the energy. And when it receives the energy, your body will then recognize the emotion. There was hidden PTSD and it's down in the heart. Well, okay, let's send some of the biochemical changes. Let's send some of the electricity down there to start processing this out. Because I didn't know it was there. It was stuffed. It was stuffed away. And now your body goes, it was in my heart. I better go get it. You'll see after I use this with patients and you use it that you'll go, man, I had thoughts of when I was anxious. I remember those times of anxiousness. I've had people say, I felt a little bit there in my heart. It's like, why? Because it was stored. And it's better to get it out. I've had patients say, man, I had super bad anxiety and anxious feelings. I started taking that homeopathic, started doing the tapping. And man, the memory comes and I remember what happened, but it's not stored and stuffed away, creating a fear response the whole time. It's actually come to the surface and every organ saying, I can process this out safely. The body shook it out. So I want you guys to see the efficacy and the strength of EFT tapping. And I want you to see that you can even use homeopathics that are for emotional techniques. And you can use tapping on yourself. You can use it on your dog and cats. You can use it on your children. And you will see profound changes. I've seen parents that do that. They'll use essential oils, and they'll actually take essential oils and use the essential oils that are used for certain emotional releases and literally take those points and rub it on the beginning and ending points. And they'll do a little tapping on there, and they'll actually just speak to their child and say, hey, even though you have this, this, and this, you love yourself. And this is what can be a beautiful, vibrant life. And those children, even if they are young or they're just newborn, literally people think, does that work? Yes, it works. And they'll see like the emotions of the child changes. You're bringing all that trauma and such to the surface. So remember, there's Des Bio remedies. We'll put that down in the show notes. If you have any comments, we'll put that there. And I want you guys to know that if you have any more questions on this kind of therapy technique, just look at the show notes with the EFT tapping. You're going to go and you can explore, and there's some really cool ways to use homeopathics and tapping and essential oils to help the body heal these emotions. It'll help your EMDR. It'll help your neurofeedback. I don't say one's better than the other. I'm saying it will help all of it to help you release it. You have to look at emotions and trapped traumas as though you had, like, let's say, a very bad body injury. The body records all of these things in the brain. You just have to initiate the change in the brain and in the body. So guys, that was a lot. I wanted to let you know about EFT tapping. If you guys like this information, how it was described about EFT tapping, please let me know. And if you like this kind of information, just give us a comment, shoot us a message so we can keep putting things like this out there. And if you love this and you have somebody else that's been going through some hard times or suffering through some trapped emotions, please send this to them. Maybe they can research and find some benefit from this. Like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And just please know that I'm cheering you on. And I really appreciate you guys listening today. For all of you guys who are just listening, drive safe or wherever you're at. Here at Ancient Health Podcast, we're just thankful we can get the word out. Love you guys, and I hope you guys have a blessed day. Remember, check us out each week. We have a couple of podcasts coming out every single week, and we want to keep putting out information that helps you with simple, easy to understand information. And so until next time, take it easy. I'll see you soon. Have a great day.